Hi, everyone. This is Joanna Connor, and you're listening to Rock at Night.
Yeah, are you ready? Hey, tonight I'm gonna take you on a little trip. We're going down south by the mighty Mississippi. I'm gonna take you to a place where lights never dim. Bring your mother, your brother, and your best friend. I'm gonna show you where they dance out in the street. They'll tell you all about your body heat. I'm not gonna talk about it, just gonna do it. Get on down if you feel up good. Get on down.
Welcome to Rocket Night Magazine, and I've been actually following you on YouTube like everybody else, seeing your viral videos from barbecues and life festivals. And the first time I saw you was like, wow, was my first thing. And then the second thing I thought of was, why do I not know her?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be what people say. Why haven't I heard of you and your work? And it's garbage. But it made me think of Betty Levette.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Yeah.
her, and nobody heard of her for the longest time.
True.
She
Yeah.
came out in the 60s, and then she's from Detroit too, and then
Mm-hmm.
she just disappeared, and all of a sudden it's almost like later in your life you get a second career going.
Yeah, it's sure looking that way for me.
That's a good thing.
It is a good
That's a
thing.
good thing.
I'll take it.
I am so impressed for so many reasons, but the fact that as a young girl you up and left and went to Chicago, that takes balls.
Yeah, I have pretty big balls.
Yeah.
I must say.
Why Chicago, and what was that like as a young girl going into that city?
Wow. I went here when I was 19 on like a cross country trip, and I stopped here on purpose because I love the Chicago blues that I used to see in Massachusetts. So I was like, oh, I got to go check out these clubs and these bands. And once I got here, it was even better than I imagined. So I was like, I have to live here. I just want to be here. I want to do this every day. And so 3 years later, I did. I kind of arranged some things and moved out there, and it was a combination of everything. It was wonderful. It was scary. It was a life changer. It was yeah, I had a lot of courage, I must say. I used to go into the absolute worst neighborhoods. I didn't care. I think I had a guardian angel at every step because really nothing bad ever happened. And I even had police stop me once, like, oh, are you lost? Are you okay? Do you need help? I'm like, no, I'm going to my gig up the street. I'm good. And they're like looking at me like, okay. So yeah. But just the opportunity I had to pretty quickly play with a lot of the greats. It was mind blowing. I mean, every day I'd call home, talk to somebody. Hey, guess what I just jammed with? Blah blah blah. But there was some down moments too. I mean, not everyone was welcoming. Some people were upset I was there. Some people didn't care. I mean, humans react in different ways. So it wasn't all a bed of roses. But for the most part, it was pretty damn wonderful.
I mean, I'm picturing a young girl with a guitar case walking around, and you're dealing with a lot of these old timers, these old blues people. I would think that they would think like, who the hell is she? Or, you know, they may not be welcoming. And let's face it, it's a male dominated genre. Blues
Yeah.
people are mostly men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, music in general. I mean, even in rock. I mean, there's definitely more women in rock, but because it's such a bigger category of music. But I mean, the people running the sound are usually men. The people booking the shows are usually men. I mean, it goes like all layers of the business. So, but I decided when I was a young girl, I was like, a lot of the things I liked were guy things. I loved collecting baseball cards. I loved playing basketball. I loved music. I loved rock music. I loved blues. So I was just like, I can't play baseball professionally. So that broke my heart at 12 years old. Like, I'll never be able to do this. I remember sitting at Fenway Park thinking that, like, in tears, like, it's not fair. So when I decided to really be a musician, I'm like, well, they can't stop me now. So that's kind of what drove me from there.
You think of yourself as a guitarist probably first, but you have a great voice. I mean,
Thank you.
I presume you just naturally were born with it, or did you have to develop it?
I think I was born with it. The first time I remember we had a really wonderful choir teacher when I was in 5th grade, and she went and she had to sing God Bless America or something. And she went to she leaned over and listened to everybody's voice at their desk, and she tapped you on your shoulder if you made the audition. And I remember she tapped me on my shoulder. I was like, "Ooh, yay!" So I think you're born with a voice, and I mean, then you got to make the best of it. I took a few vocal classes, but mostly it's just my own, pursuit per se.
Mhm. You know, learning the guitar, especially you're talking about probably late 70s, early 80s, we didn't have the internet. And the only way to really learn was to figure out things by yourself or be lucky enough to have somebody show you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I remember myself even trying to take vinyl albums and play them over and over. You put the arm down because you can't figure out
Yes.
by ear. It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
Now
Mhm.
you do teach my phone. You do teach online lessons too.
Mhm.
I saw
Yeah.
on YouTube you were teaching some slide guitar.
Mhm.
Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have like DVDs or any kind of teaching stuff that maybe people could go to? Well, that might be the next thing to do then.
Yeah. Well, they can go to Joanna Connor Guitar at Gmail and email me. And then that's how I've been advertising on, social media, like email me. We'll talk over through email, and then we figure out times and days and nights or whatever. And we do it either by Zoom or whatever, Skype or whatever. So that's what I've been doing. I mean, I never had the time to teach. So I had so many gigs. So now it's like, well, what am I going to do here? It's like I better start teaching because I got to make some kind of living. So, but it's been fun. I mean, what's cool about the internet is compared to is I did teach about 10 years ago in a music store. So I was in that neighborhood teaching those kids or whatever adults. But I taught a guy in China this morning, and then I teach a girl in Germany on Saturday, and I teach a guy in Idaho and Connecticut. It's kind of cool, you
That is
know.
real cool. Do they
Yeah.
mostly want to learn slide or just blues guitar in general?
Um, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some people, I mean, I even have some real beginners that are just barely making chords. So I have all different kinds of students, and I need 10 more students just so you know. Um, because I had a writing job and a podcast, but the guy that was funding it, he had some health issues. So I was like, I just lost that this week. So I was writing a couple columns too. So I was which has been cool. That's another passion of mine. But I never, it was just for my own fun. But now I actually, yeah.
Do you write about like blues history or just what do you like to write
Well,
about?
it started off with the Chicago Blues Network where I was teaching, doing well, you saw the slide lesson. 'Cause I
Yeah.
like to write a column so it was about my experiences in blues and sometimes my thoughts on, being, talking about drummers or bass players or women vocalists, but, my connection and my philosophy or ideas. And then a woman named Martine, I can never pronounce her last name, but she has Rock and Blues Muse on the internet. She reached out to me, said, "Would you like to do some writing for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really like the way you write." And so I did. I wrote an article about the time I jammed with Jimmy Page and the time I played with Buddy, had a guitar battle with Buddy Guy. So those are the two articles that went out for her. So that's been fun. That's going to continue for now. So my next column, I think, will be about when I was jamming with Buddy Miles. So I was really fortunate in Chicago to meet these people, and get some I even got to know. I mean, Jimmy
Yeah.
Page was a one night thing jamming, but obviously, but yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
I saw the video of you yesterday with When the Levee Breaks, and I love your version of it.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
so good. And I'm thinking you have four people, but the keyboard is playing a lot of what would be the guitar part. You sound so full.
Yeah, that's my band. That's the one you saw.
Really
That current band.
great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't sound like just four people. It sounds like a lot
No,
bigger.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's when I'm old. Yeah.
Well, if you ever want to contribute to us, we're female run. Female. I'm the editor, the managing editor's female,
Oh, I
and we
love
have
to.
female artists, mostly females, and we always try to promote female artists because there's just not enough opportunities for women to get their name out there. And
Mhm.
that's one reason when Peter told me, that you just cut the album with Joe, I thought, oh, a perfect opportunity. I definitely will want to promote another female artist because we just don't have the opportunity. And
Mhm.
it made me think about the blues in general. When you think about the blues, the women used to be prominent. If you think about the pioneers like the Bessie Smith and then Ma Rainey, they just had
Mhm.
that Netflix
Mhm.
thing about Ma Rainey.
Yeah.
And then they seemed to die out like after the 50s or so.
Yeah. True. Yeah, it was only like Big Mama Thornton, or it was just, yeah, it totally switched. I know. I don't really understand why that happened. I don't know, maybe because the music style kind of evolved to something different, maybe because that was more yeah, I don't know. It became more guitar centric and stuff, I think.
Well, and that I actually started thinking a lot about this because I thought, why are you not so well known? And I started thinking there's probably a handful of women that I could even think of in the blues
Mhm.
industry or the blues rock. It seems like from the 70s, 80s, 90s, really up to about the millennium, there's been no women.
Right. Now there's more.
Yeah,
Now, like five of us.
yeah.
No, there hasn't been. Yeah, and that kind of blew my mind. Like people say, "Well, what women were your influences on guitar?" And I'm like, "Well, to be honest, none, because there wasn't any. There was Bonnie Raitt,
Exactly.
but she was more of a vocalist than a guitarist, in my opinion. She's a great guitar player for what
Well,
she does."
I think of Elizabeth Cotton when I think
Yeah,
too of,
with Cotton, I didn't even think of her. Yeah, there's a handful, but it's just so, yeah, it's really unusual. But there are more and more. I read that 50% of guitar sales are to women now and girls, so it's definitely a new day. It's definitely evolving. But like when I was coming up, yeah, there was no role models per
yeah,
se.
yeah. I mean, and I think I'm hoping that's changing because now, I mean, I see a few women guitarists out there, Joanne Shaw Taylor, Anna Popovich.
Mm-hmm.
I know Joe works with Beth Hart. I've seen
Hmm.
her. And I really like the fact that he likes to take women under his wing. And I
He
thought,
does.
he's a musician's musician.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to collaborate with people. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity. And I mean, I listened to your album do you say 4801? That's what I did.
Yeah,
4801 Seth and Dan Avenue.
yeah.
And man, the production, the way you sound, it's so full.
Thank
I
you.
mean,
It is.
you've got piano in there. You've got just these little nuances like there's a bell in the one song, oh, Bad News. It's like,
Yeah,
whoa. It's
yeah,
just sounds so full. The engineering of it is great.
yes, it is.
And I'd say it's a combination of like traditional blues, but also some real rocking songs.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Well, you nailed all that. Your
Yeah,
ears.
it's like Destination is definitely rock.
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw that Jimmy Hall is in it. Is that the same Jimmy Hall that plays with Jeff Beck?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes,
God, I love his voice because I've seen Jeff Beck a few times and I love him.
yeah, he's fabulous. And he's
Wow.
such a guy. Super nice.
That song was really good. And I noticed you really paid homage to a lot of the old Chicago blues people
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of kind of obscure songs, maybe not so much, but you really made them your own.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, they're pretty obscure, most of them. Yeah.
Cut You Loose is really good.
Thank you. Yeah, that arrangement. I've know a couple of other versions, but Joe and Josh really took that somewhere else. They arranged all the music and they would always put little twists and turns, but never like still you could feel the tradition, but they definitely
Yeah.
put little, which I loved. I loved how they did that.
Your voice, in fact, in that one, to me, it's almost like Tina Turner.
Thank you. Ooh, thank you.
I
Well, it's
love
fun.
her.
I do too. And it's my voice first. If you listen to my older records, my voice is a lot higher. It's very clear. And then I sang like so many hours at the Kingston Mines and I got older and it's got raspy quality, even when I'm like,
Yes.
yeah. And I'm like, oh,
That's
it's
what
fun.
I like.
I got my blues voice.
That's exactly why, not only, I mean, in a sense, you're the real deal because you sound like real authentic blues voice.
Thank
I
you.
can't stand the smooth, sanitized, some of the blues people that are male and female that I've heard. They're smooth. I want to hear
Yeah.
texture, and I can hear texture in your voice.
Thank you. Well, my goal was, I came to Chicago too because it's an African American city and it's an African American blues scene. And I mean, I'm not going to go like put people in categories, but I wanted to learn from the peoples who made the music, and I
Exactly.
would be in there. And part of it is vocally, you had to cut it some kind of way. I held down gigs at blues clubs in Chicago where most white people didn't have those gigs at front people. So it was sink or swim. I had to figure things out along the way, like how to be myself, not be like an imitator or trying too hard, but be authentic. But I try to absorb like as much as I could. That's why I like was a student of blues, not just guitar wise, but vocally, trying to find my voice, but to try to be authentic in a way, but not officially authentic. Does that make sense? I hope so.
It totally makes sense because I listened to your album the first time over the weekend. Usually I'll just kind of do a cursory listen, like I'm fixing dinner or whatever. And then I really listen to it. Anyway, I was listening, and if I closed my eyes, I would think that you were a Black woman singing who had grown up in the church, like authentic gospel rhythm and blues. I would never know that you were a white woman from Massachusetts.
And I did spend time in gospel churches. I actually sang on one in the South Side, and I sang Amazing Grace. They asked me, and I'll tell you what, it was, whew, I mean, I almost cried.
Wow.
So I've had that I was very privileged to have that experience, several times. I actually dated a guy who was a guitar player at this church, and he would always come, me and my daughter. My daughter was in the choir, and it was really, I mean, gospel singers are like the absolute pinnacle to me, Yeah.
That's how I feel too. And even Bad News, you almost have a Janis Joplin kind of, I don't know, nuance to your voice, and with Please Help too.
Yeah. Well, I loved her.
That raspy, and even Trouble, very soulful, raspy R&B. I mean, you nailed it.
Well, you just made my day.
No, I mean, this album, and it's funny. I'm not just, don't think I just tell everybody. I mean, I'm not bullshitting.
You're right.
This is probably one of the best blues albums I've heard in many, many years. And
Thank
the
you. That's
whole
a
the whole production of it is just whatever you and Joe did, you nailed it. You were in the zone.
we're in the zone, and thank you for noticing that. I mean,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if that was going to happen because I'd never worked with him. I've only met him briefly. We talked for a few months, but it wasn't like he was my pal. Josh, I knew from when he was a kid. He sat home with me many times, but I didn't know what was going to happen. But I trusted that it would be good, but it could have been a flop. You never know. But Joe also got like the A team. He got great engineers, great studio, a guy that mastered like every major artist ever mastered this record. So he put some real, skin in the game. He really,
How
yeah.
did you psych yourself into it? I would be intimidated knowing that there's all this pressure. He brought me to Nashville. He brought all these musicians in. Now you have to perform. How the hell did you psych yourself into it?
Man, I'll tell you what. I was a mess well, this is the thing. I've been in not like this situation, but I've been in high pressure situations. I was called in a guitar battle with Buddy Guy. I was, in front of major labels at one time. I was in a movie last year and had so there was like little stops along the way that kind of got me ready for this. I did open for ZZ Top a long time ago in Belgium. Little things I was like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out, and even when Joe came to the club to see us, it was in November, because we've been talking. I'm like, what if I'm playing? And he's like, no, I changed my mind. She's not that good. So I was looking at my bass player, the little guy in the video that you probably noticed with the red mohawk.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I call him Silky. I'm like, Silky, I'm panicking. And he looks at me and goes, Jojo, we got your back. Just play. Don't worry, girl. And he's such a sweetheart. And I'm like, okay. So it's like, yeah, I did. And on the plane ride down there, I was like, oh shit. I knew it was like either I was gonna like sink or swim. It was like either you're gonna bomb and go home with your tail between your legs, or you're gonna just do your thing. And I was talking to my kids, and they're like, Mom, don't worry. You're the GOAT. Just go in and do it. You got this. So I did. I psyched myself in. And then Joe made it. He really did, because I was like, geez, I got to sit in front of one of the greatest guitar players ever in the room. Like, I was like, oh no, God. But he was just so cool and funny. He's like got this really dry sense of humor that I love. So I was like, it's gonna be good. And then all the guys in the band were encouraging. And Reese Winans comes up to me, goes, he goes, you're a badass. Those are his first words. And I was like, my God, that's Stevie Ray Vaughan's keyboard player and Joe. So I felt bad. Like, what? Wow, what a compliment.
Uh, respect is a nice term. The guys respect you.
Yeah.
And you had to pay your dues, and obviously your talent speaks for itself.
Thank you.
I think that's why a lot of the guys are accepting and everything. It's kind of hard to break that glass ceiling,
Yeah.
to get there and everything. One thing I noticed that you've played a lot in Europe. The audiences over there are a lot more accepting. And tell me some interesting experiences you've had touring, like overseas and stuff.
I was in Europe like from like 1990 to 2000, like multiple times. And I didn't want to come home. I was like, I had my son then. He was a little boy, and I took him many times. He's like, Mommy, I don't want to live there. They don't have Nickelodeon.
Or peanut butter.
Right. Isn't really that much fun, and I was like, there's no Michael Jordan. And I was like, yeah, I know. Because I really considered living in one of the countries over there. It's like, it's so much better for musicians here. But like that, I toured with Luther Allison as his opening act for years. I opened up for Screaming Jay Hawkins for a month, which was, I have multiple stories about him. He was a real character. He actually liked me in the band, but he tortured his band. He absolutely tortured his band.
Oh,
And I opened up for ZZ Top over there in Belgium, which is amazing. I was on shows with Joe Cocker.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, great, big festivals with like, because they're a little bit more into blending. Like I did some exclusive blues festivals, but they're and I opened up for Robin Ford in Amsterdam, and then in Holland a couple years ago, gosh, how could I forget this? I was on a show with Joe, Walter Trout, Jeff Beck,
Hmm.
and Ringo Starr and the All Stars. I was standing next to Ringo Starr. I'm like, oh my God, because I listened to the Beatles as a kid. I'm like, I can't even believe I'm breathing the same air as this guy. Yeah, so yeah, it was some great opportunities, and just it's beautiful there. I loved Italy. I was there 2 years ago, and we didn't do any big gigs, but just these gorgeous and the piazzas outside, and just yeah, love and the best food ever. Yeah, it was great. I love. I mean, there's so much over there.
You're listening to Rock at Night.
The introductory song, Get On Down, is from blues artist Billy Bass Alford. Look for his music at ReverbNation.com.